From Demon Souls to Elden Ring, FromSoft has reinvented gaming with their very own take on action RPG genres. And this formula created by Miyazaki became so popular, fans started calling it Souls games. What happened next is beautifully described by Oscar Wilde. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. What I mean is, other game studios wanted to cash in on this very formula. Since then, there have been so many imitations of this genre, so many that we have a name for them now, Soulslike. However, 2023 has been quite interesting. Two games has divided the Souls fanbase like no other, Lies of P and Lords of the Fallen. And while the former is an absolute darling for the reviewers with extremely positive reviews, Lords of the Fallen, well, has fallen behind and many calling it bad. Let's cut the chase. In my opinion, Lords of the Fallen is a better Souls-like as compared to Lies of P, and I'm going to tell you why. So let's pop off, shall we? So, before I tell you why LOTF is a better Souls game, let's first deep dive into what is a Souls game. What makes a Souls game a Souls-like that the man himself, Miyazaki, would be proud of? Experience and leveling. That feeling of progression is one of the most satisfying aspects of Souls games. Treasures. We love to explore every nook and cranny, hoping to find some treasure we might have missed. Well designed maps and shortcuts. Getting lost in Miyazaki's world, troubled what is lurking ahead to take away all your souls, and the joy to then finally find a shortcut. Bosses. Some of the most challenging but also most memorable moments of any Souls game. Every boss bringing a new type of challenge. Atmosphere. Well, to that, I have only one word for you: Bloodborne. Weapons. Don't we just love to try out new weapons and even change our stats to try a new build? Multiplayer. What's the point of having a strong build if you cannot try it against other online players? Now let's see how these points stack up in Lords of the Fallen. We're gonna number each point out of 10 and then give it a final score. Let's call that Soul Score. So let's get on with it. Number 1, experience and leveling. Why do so many of us Souls fans spend hours and hours in these games? The joy of leveling up to get stronger is one of the best feelings. You feel rewarded for all the time that you spend in that world. LOTF is one such game. Yeah, I mean, even though the levels in itself are tough, with the different enemy types and the mini bosses, and yeah, even the mobs. More on that later. But I don't mind dying because I know I'll gain more experience, and there is no shortage of treasure drops from these enemies, so it even makes it more worthwhile. Now, let's compare that with Lies of P. Tell me, how many times after killing an enemy you just didn't bother with the loot? Is he gonna drop his armor? No. Then surely he's gonna drop some weapon, right? Nope, he's not. I think LOTF has an excellent progression system. This point is actually quite difficult to put in words, but you Souls diehards, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Where you feel the enemies are getting weaker, mobs getting thinner, but in reality, you are getting stronger. And I got that feeling much more in Lords of the Fallen as compared to Lies of P. So I'm gonna give it a soul score of 8. And with that, we can conveniently segue into our next point, the loot. Now, let's be honest, with the different spells, armor, catalyst, weapons, the different throwables, the cures and buffs you can put on your weapon, the different rings. Each build has a different set of rings you can use. I just keep exploring each level of every map and the game never disappoints. The enemy loot drop is excellent too. You can get complete armor sets plus their weapons, and there is something always hidden away in different parts of the map. For me, that's an easy 9 out of 10. Talking of maps, now, what's the best thing about all FromSoft games? It's not the bosses or the lore, it's the dangerous world that you're put into and how you find your way through it. The idea of getting lost in the map, not knowing where to go, and then to find a hidden pathway to a boss or a secret location for a new loot, and to finally find a shortcut is what makes FromSoft games so unique and so difficult to make. I love this aspect about Lords of the Fallen. Love that when you find a secret location, the game rewards you with some amazing loot. The different layers of the map where each layer has a secret, a treasure, which frankly makes the journey worthwhile. Now, compare that with Lies of P. It's one of the most linear games I have come across. It's like going from one location to the next to find a challenging boss and then breaking your head to defeat it. Which is fine, don't get me wrong. But in between, I do want to enjoy this world, explore it, find significant treasure which actually makes you more powerful. And then finally coming across a boss and trying out your newfound strength, or a new spell you discovered, or a new weapon. In Lies of P, it's like we're in a simulator where you just go from one location to the next, barely getting stronger, or even if you are, you don't visually see it or feel it. And it's like if you can perfect parry, you can defeat any boss. So, Soulscore you ask? Well, I'm gonna give it a 8 out of 10. It loses on 2 points mainly because I do wish there was more variety, like the beautiful fields overlooking the mountains in Ghost of Tsushima, or this mesmerizing dusk in Witcher 3, or this scary night in Bloodborne. With Unreal Engine 5, I am sure they could have experimented much more with locations. This brings me to bosses. When it comes to bosses, Lords of the Fallen has received its fair share of criticism as well. I feel these days, and this is my personal opinion, the reviewers are only concerned how challenging the bosses are. If they made the bosses 10 times tougher, I'm sure every reviewer would be shouting on top of their head how good these bosses are. But even so, as someone who loves FromSoft bosses, from Orphan of Course to Melania to Ishin to Slave Knight Gale, I do love Lords of the Fallen bosses as well. To a lesser extent. Are they anywhere near the quality of these bosses? Hell no. They are absolute legends. But Lords of the Fallen bosses have variety, and many of these bosses require different strategies to defeat them. Could they have been more challenging? Yeah, I think so. But what you do get is a good mix of boss battles, from a Crystal Maze type ranged boss in a cellar to a unique boss battle on a horseback such as the Hush Saint, to a Lady Maria style boss in Judge Cleric, and to a Ludwig type beast in Congregator of Flesh. Are they as good as the bosses I mentioned from FromSoft games? Absolutely not. You cannot match FromSoft bosses, but I'm glad there's a wide variety of bosses and all with different movesets, and you need more than just perfect parry to defeat them. So overall, I would still say this is the weakest aspect of Lords of the Fallen. Yeah, I mean, they could have made the bosses more challenging with a wider moveset that we would have to learn and adapt. So keeping all that in mind, I'm gonna give it a soul score of 6. But even this valid criticism has been addressed recently. They are gonna release a huge game-changing update with increased boss difficulty and a free DLC with new bosses. Anyways, for now, let's keep rolling. Next up, Atmosphere. Hexworks has demonstrated that it is a master of world design and atmosphere, building out a delightfully somber and engrossing world with Monstered. Quite perfect for a Souls fan. This game's whole aesthetic is very dark, gritty, demonic. I mean, if it were a music album, it would surely be gothic heavy metal. And immersive enough to even make us overlook some of its bad elements. And it's a huge miss. And the issue is that you cannot fully take in this atmosphere, because shortly enough you're going to be overwhelmed by a huge mob. And I am glad that in a recent update they have reduced this mob density. But the worst is still these ranged enemies. It's like they have got some auto aim or something. I'm sure all of you who's played this game know exactly what I'm talking about. Those WTF moments. So stupid. But the good heavily overweighs the bad. So the soul score. I mean, I do want to give it a 9, but because of these enemies, and I do wish some parts of the map had more color, like Elden Ring or Sekiro. So it's a 8. Now, the penultimate point, weapons and spells. This is one aspect of Lords of the Fallen I feel has lived up to the Souls game genre and is far better than Lies of P. There are different types of weapons. Radiant swords if you want to try a radiant build. Umbral weapon if you fancy an umbral build. Inferno weapons if you want to imbue your weapon with fire. And finally, heavy weapons which truly feel heavy, and it's slow and your every hit feels like a punch and you knock your enemy down. This point I need to give special mention. I hated this about Lies of P because you could never break enemy posture, which made heavy weapons pretty useless. And if you like magic, Lords of the Fallen has you covered. You can use spells to protect yourself, deal extra damage, imbue your weapon with status effects, and more. So, there are three types of spells you can use in Lords of the Fallen: Radiant spells, Inferno spells, and Umbral spells. And each have their own list of catalysts, and every catalyst has a unique property for you to try. I don't remember the last time an action RPG game gave so many options. I mean, I have to give this a big juicy 10 on 10. And then one remained: multiplayer integration. Co op and PvP make a huge portion of the fan base of Souls games. Having said that, PvP in Lords of the Fallen does need a lot of work, especially with those frame drops. But also, I really appreciate them for trying to make it work rather than completely skipping it like in some games. I'm looking at you, Lies of P. I'm gonna give this a 5. Great that they have it, bad for its average implementation. So now let's look at the final score. Experience and leveling 8. Loot, so good, 9. Maps and shortcuts 8. I really wish that in the DLC they reduce the mobs, add more enemy variety, and give more life to the map, add more color. Bosses 6. Yeah, there is so much room for improvement here. Really looking forward to the big update Hexworks has promised us. Atmosphere 8. The fact that I compared it with Bloodborne is a win. Weapons, yeah, and spells too. 10. I really don't know what more this game could have done. Multiplayer, yeah, 5. Sorry, cannot give more than this. So, the final score: 7.7. In conclusion, is Lords of the Fallen a better game than Lies of P? Probably not. But is Lords of the Fallen a better Souls game than Lies of P? The answer is a big yes for all the reasons I mentioned above. And at the price the game is going right now, either on Steam or on consoles, in my humble opinion, this game is a great Souls like nostalgia. Well, until this one drops.